Right. And now that we're back into the safety of the Foundation base here in Potter's Hill, with no disturbances, it should be safe to report our entries from now on, right, sir?
Setting protective incantations should have done the trick, yes. I suppose only time will tell. The mysteries of the ethereal disturb and interrupt many things which we call safe.
Very true, sir. The Well, this investigation has certainly proved that point. I should also tell this in the reporting before we get into the current entry. The reasons why we might sound panicked or not. Hopefully not, at least for the recordings.
Yes, the Foundation needs each key detail for investigations, especially those who are dealing firsthand with the perilous paranormal.
Exactly my point, sir. Well, since the last entry, both Mr. Myself and my mentor decided to take a night visit close to the mountain range where the fires are seen on multiple occasions. We were careful and quiet, and though we didn't go to the circular field where the heart of the forest is, we crept up close enough to see the witch's entrance. It was, well, ominous to say the least. No one had approached it just yet, but in the slopes of the mountain there was a triangular entrance carved from stone and had runes etched deep into the frame. In front of this entrance there seemed to be some sort of stone altar. We couldn't get close to it because once we approached a little too close, voices shouted at us that they could see us and we'd be dead if they caught up to us.
Naturally, we sprinted out of the woods the best we could, though they chased after us for quite some time. It reminded me, at least, of that hiker who was lost in the woods and was being tracked by that odd gray creature.
Yeah, a good callback, sir. I hadn't really thought of that. But yeah, we made it out, despite them clearly following our tracks. We lay low for a while and not really returning to the Foundation base until a few days ago. Luckily, everything was still here and nothing was broken. But seeing that altar in front of the mountain entrance led us to believe that vile things are happening there.
The protection and defense of this cult can be extreme. However, I think we were able to see that what we did because of lack of security. We were fortunate to gather such crucial details. Of course, the triangular entrance ties directly to the cult symbol of the double triangle. That much is clear. But what they do at that altar is what troubles me.
Which does bring us to our current entry. It takes place at the very same spot that we were just visiting. This story, though, was written and recorded last year, so I'm not sure if the victims are still around or not.
Yet it is very vital to our predicament. What they do there spells horrendous disaster.
It, it really does, yes. I suppose then I should get to the entry. I'm still a little shaken up by that chase, and I'm definitely still paranoid that something or someone has been watching us. I'm worried that they might have found us already.
The paranoia will linger as long as we continue this investigation. But for now, record the entry so we may leave the Foundation base for a few more days.
I, I hope that wasn't what I thought it was, but yes, you're right. Well, let's get into the entry before anything else happens. This incident revolves around a couple, Jacob and Sylvia. Their last names were not included as they didn't want others to know who they were specifically. Probably for a good reason, too. This couple was from out of town, but they knew about Potter's Hill because of the mountains and woods. Great hiking places and beautiful views to soak in the tranquility of nature. Most visitors come here for that reason to begin with. Jacob and Sylvia were planning on visiting for a weekend to hike the trails and possibly scale through some cliffs. They had been all around the country throughout their years together, trekking through thick forests, wading through deep rivers, and climbing high mountains. They were the thrill seekers who found adventure everywhere they went. But this adventure would prove to be one they'd never forget, and a place where they'd never return. While the couple was entering town, they stopped at a local cafe for a quick breakfast before hitting the trails. Their breakfast went by fine, but when they were about to leave, they overheard some locals talking about the more swampy areas of the forest, which piqued the couple's interest. If there was some difficult terrain nearby, it was important to learn about it. Jacob approached a few older men who were talking about it. catching the last few words of feral people and more disappearances. Jacob had to think twice about it. Feral people living so close to a neighborhood? Jacob had heard about feral people living deep in the woods, but certainly not from around here. The disappearances comment made his heart quicken, though. Kidnappings and capturings had been on the news more times than he could count, and it worried him immensely. It wasn't just specific people that were vanishing. It was just any type. A completely random choice. More than anything, he just didn't want Sylvia to be one of those unfortunate souls. When Jacob confronted the older men, he asked about the swamps nearby and told them that he and Sylvia were hikers, searching for new trails. The old men warned him not to go near the swamplands, repeating the dangers of the feral people. Apparently, a small community of homeless people had wandered from beyond the other side of the mountain and near to the town's borders. They never came inside the town, but most folks could see their small fires from inside the woods. Some curious teens dared to get close to them and saw that they lived in huts, gathered together like a commune of sort. But no one ever approached them. Something about them gave a dark aura, like they were protected by someone of strange powers or something out of the ordinary. Jacob listened to them but didn't fully believe the old men's tales. He thanked them for the information and led Sylvia out of the cafe, telling her the report. Though she was a little skeptical too, she did know the dangers of feral people too, and knew they were capable of perilous deeds. Eventually, they did make their way to the edge of the forest, where a few other cars were parked. One was extremely old, rusting away and covered in moss, branches, and weeds. It was as if it hadn't been moved or touched in years. Is this the same car that the one hiker drove? The one who saw the great creature? Jason, yeah. Jason Hansen?
Very likely, and not a pleasant update to hear. But go on now. Perhaps the rest of the entry will give us something more to think about.
Right. Apologies, sir. Once the couple had seen some activity of other people in the area, the conversation from earlier was out of their minds. They followed the main trails for the first hour, taking in the fresh air and admiring the absolute beauty of the nature around them, listening to the songs of birds and hearing the sounds of a rushing stream nearby. They wanted to get closer to the mountain to see more of the natural water sprouting from the cliffsides, and so they began to venture into smaller and lesser-known trails. Winding its way through an unfamiliar area, one trail led the couple over and under steep hills and jutting across steep inclines. But just when they thought this trail might have been abandoned, they noticed some movement up ahead. 3 figures, all of them wearing what looked like white robes, were walking in their direction, their backs straight and their movement stiff. It was as if they were robots, looking directly ahead with unblinking eyes. All 3 of them had shaved heads, though, one of them having a more feminine figure. A blue circular pattern was either painted or tattooed around their heads, each the same design, and as the 3 figures walked right past Jacob and Sylvia, the couple noticed odd writings that were on top of the blue tattoos. Neither of them knew what language it was as they glanced over their shoulder multiple times in case these odd people had devious purposes. But the figures never turned around or looked at the couple, just walked on by and disappeared into the woods. Both Jacob and Sylvia agreed that when they could see this trail going off to a different one, they'd choose the other one. But the only problem was that this trail continued on further, getting closer to the mountain, and where Jacob and Sylvia claimed that they lost track of time. It was past noon when they came upon another very strange sight, and one that made Jacob shiver in fright. The very same people that the older men had talked about were shuffling around their small community, made of huts and man-made caves. There was indeed a separate trail that led off to the right, but they would have to make a run for it. Otherwise, the only other option was to turn around and possibly confront the 3 figures from before. Sylvia looked back at the mention of them and gasped. There they were, all 3 figures walking much faster than before, and in their direction. Sylvia pushed Jacob to go further, but the loud footsteps and startled shouts caught the attention of the feral people. Dressed in tattered clothes, stained with dirt and mud, and having extremely wrinkled and worn skin, the feral people snarled and yelped like animals the moment they saw Jacob and Sylvia. Immediately, the couple darted forward and prayed for the best. It was a panicked and heart-pounding moment. From one direction, the 3 cult-like figures were gaining on them, while in the other direction, a pack of mindless forest people were chasing them down, throwing stones and sharpened sticks at them. Jacob was hit several times in the back as he let Sylvia run ahead of him. He felt the bruises form immediately. Fortunately, none of the sharpened sticks had hit him, but he did manage to grab one that flew straight over his head and got stuck in the wet mud in front. It was the least he could have for protection. They rushed past the small, dirty community and into the other path. Sweat pouring down and with labored breathing, the couple escaped the people narrowly and found themselves running until they were completely out of breath. They could still hear the people, but faint and far away. The trail continued on, further and closer to the mountain. Once they caught their breath and chugged down some much-needed water, they followed the path until it started to become dark. Sunset was nearing, and they had no shelter. But their terrible day was not done yet. Sylvia spotted movement ahead and alarmed Jacob. They saw not just the three figures from before, but an entire group of the same styled people walking silently through the woods. There could have been at least a dozen, from what Jacob guessed. What they were all doing so deep in the forest, he couldn't guess, at least not yet. Just then, both he and Sylvia noticed something very out of place, an entrance into the mountain. A triangular frame that stood nearly 10 feet high as other people in white robes were standing completely still underneath it. Jacob and Sylvia crept closer once the first crew had gone by and watched the group. Once everyone was present, the entire group shed their white cloaks to reveal ominously black cloaks with red linings and red symbols on them. A double triangle, where one had its point down and the other up. A straight line went through both triangles vertically. Both Jacob and Sylvia grimaced at the thought that they were witnessing a cult ritual in the making. And they were. From inside the entrance of the mountain, two cultists were dragging a bound woman behind them, her body tied with thick rope and a blindfold on. She was struggling, trying to get out of her bonds any way possible, but the amount of people there were now was far too overwhelming for her. They dragged her onto a flat stone altar, which had strange symbols carved into it. The cultists began to chant in eerie tone while the leader held up a tome of a blackened book and boomed a vile incantation. During the chanting and at the end of the leader's spell, a mist that was blacker than the night itself snaked its way out of the mountain and lingered for a moment, as if in deep thought of which body was making the offering. The woman squirmed crazily, and desperate cries were attempted to fill the air, but she was gagged with a thick cloth. The black mist suddenly thinned and without hesitation pinned down the woman with a ferocious force, sending a strong wind across the cliffs and trees. Tall red candles from around the altar lit up at once, their flames extending higher than usual, surrounding the black mist until it took the form of a body. 2 legs like those of a goat, a torso that bubbled like a hot stew, and the head of a skeleton with 2 extensive horns rising from it. An absolute blasphemous and evil figure. But this figure would only appear for a few seconds before returning back to a thin wisp and entering into the woman's mouth, splitting apart the gag and into her body. There was a moment of silence then. No chanting, no incantations. Jacob and Sylvia were as still as statues. Just as the sun's final light was vanishing and the moon took its place, the body of the woman levitated above the altar, snapping off the rope and with her arms stretched out wide. She hovered there for a long time before she was dropped loosely on the stone slab and rolled to the ground. When she stood up, she was as stiff as those who were around her, and she was staring directly in Jacob and Sylvia's direction. That caused them to back up immediately, but not before they caught the glimpse of a sudden fire on the altar, a high flame that rose above the height of the entrance itself. The image of this sudden flame with the newly possessed woman made the couple tremble in absolute fear. They wouldn't say much after this moment. Adrenaline kicked in, and they ran as far and fast as they could. Jacob took out his old compass and followed it in the opposite direction of the mountain. Each step they took, they had new fears enter their mind. It wasn't possible. It couldn't be. A witch cult hidden in the mountains? Possession by incantation? It was too dark of a topic for them both. They escaped the woods and ran back to their car, which was thankfully still there and untouched. It was morning by the time they reached their car, but that other car remained in place, the one decaying through time and wear. Another haunting image that would plague their minds for months to come. They never talked about it for weeks until they heard about the Mystica Obscura Foundation. Hesitant to return to Potter's Hill, it was clear that they were still in shock, remaining under a constant paranoia that the cultists would find them, and bring them back to that same stone altar.
A very macabre tale, to say the least. But important to note that this cult was active a year ago when this happened and may still be reenacting these terrible rituals like this today.
It makes me wonder, though, that if this was happening a year ago and the Foundation received it then why hasn't anyone dispatched to this location? Or if the Foundation could have sent any kind of warnings to local police or investigators?
There might have been a few cases that were overlooked. It does happen from time to time, unfortunately.
What? As in some people's cases are just left open? Like a cold case? The Foundation needs to put focus on each and every entry. Isn't that the point in investigating the paranormal here? I know you heard that, sir. And if it is what I thought it said, then perhaps you'll tell me what's going on here. What's the Foundation really hiding?
If you no longer have faith in the Foundation, you are more than welcome to leave. There are some cases that were overlooked. I am not the leading member of the Foundation, so I don't know why some were left out.
But you've worked with them for years now. If I've noticed some things off with the Foundation and I'm new to all this, surely you've seen some things too. I can't let the negative energies disturb the entry. We can't lose any of these. After all we've been through, these tapes can't be lost. I need some air anyway, and probably the remainder of tonight to think things through. There's just too much in the unknown. Perhaps too many secrets as well.